Kathleen Kennedy and JJ Abrams have teamed up to completely Disneyfy Star Wars. This has many fans outraged, and I want to talk about it. What is up, YouTube? It's Josh. This is the Den of Nerds. Hey, real quick, if you like Star Wars and you're seeing this channel for the first time, subscribe. We're going to be covering all of the craziness that's going to be going on as Kathleen Kennedy continues to burn our beloved property to the ground. And if you're already a subscriber, make sure to hit that little bell. Otherwise, YouTube will not tell you when our videos are coming out. But getting right into it, guys, it is the day of reckoning. News just came out that JJ Abrams, and not Rian Johnson, will be taking over to write and direct an episode. I'm sitting down with a couple awesome Star Wars fans from the Rebel Scum Podcast, Andrew and James. Guys, how are we doing?
Swell. We're ready for the sequel to The Force Awakens, and by that I mean episode 9.
Yes, we are ready for it. Yeah, pretty much. So, just so you guys know, look, this is going to be a little more long form of a video. I'm going to break it down. This is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the current Lucasfilm Disney movies, kind of take another look at The Force Awakens and Rogue One, see how we feel about them. We're going to talk about the massive, rapid-fire elimination of directors by Kathleen Kennedy, her history as a producer, and what exactly is going on there. We're going to talk about the story group, and then we're going to finish off with JJ taking over episode 9, what this means, and if we're totally screwed. So, here's the thing. There's been a lot of news going on with Disney. I mean, there's the whole streaming service thing. They're pissing people off with that. There's the Netflix thing. There's a lot of craziness, and also the Star Wars news, right? We lose Lord and Miller, and now we've got Ron Howard. That film seems to be in disarray. We lose Colin Trevorrow. Now we've got JJ Abrams. I mean, there's just a lot of uncertainty going on right now with Star Wars. People out there are really mixed about this. And I wanted to start with the current slate of Lucasfilm movies. So Lucasfilm Disney buys Lucasfilm. We have a new status quo. We have Kathleen Kennedy, now the president of Lucasfilm, and ushering in these new series of films. And we have The Force Awakens. Now, real quick, gentlemen, I want to go to you guys. It's been some time since The Force Awakens came out. Do you have any different opinions about it? Do you still feel the way that you did then? And overall, how do you feel about the movie? James, The Force Awakens, what do you think?
I think I've always had a very similar, the same stance on the film since I saw it. I liked it. There were some issues I had with it. Everyone that watches my channel, the Rebel Scum Podcast, knows the whole Rey learning to use the Force that easily was something right in the theater. I just kind of went like one of those look arounds, like, wow, what just happened here? And then, of course, the excuse is, well, when Kylo went into her mind, he taught, like, shut up. Like, that's a cop-out. It doesn't matter who you are. I can accept it. If you tell me that, I will accept it, but it's a cop-out. Whatever. But, and I liked it, and he did a great job of, the practical effects, reminding us what we loved about Star Wars. But the more I watch, it's like, well, Maz Kanata. And again, these are all feelings that I had when I first left, but I was on such a high, Maz Kanata. And Andrew and I talked about this. I really feel Maz Kanata was an underutilized character. But I think that's, not to go too far ahead into our conversation, but that I think is a J.J. Abrams problem as a whole, with his whole obsession with his mystery box. And anyway, we'll go into that a little bit later.
Yeah, so, I mean, just to touch on my feelings really quickly, I am in the same boat. I think the initial high was so strong. Now we're starting to have, the rose-tinted glasses kind of taken off. And when I look at The Force Awakens nowadays, I think, wow, what a great setup, but there's just so little substance there. Other than, Harrison's character, I really felt like he treated Han Solo well. Han Solo went out well. I felt like that was good. And some people don't even like that.
You know what, though? I think that was more of a Lawrence Kasdan, what Kasdan brought, because there were interviews with Kasdan and Abrams where they would be in shouting matches over the Han Solo dialogue. They would be in shouting matches, and Lawrence Kasdan would be adamant on the portrayal of Han Solo, because I think, other than George Lucas, nobody knows that character better than Kasdan.
Yeah, and arguably Kasdan knows it better, too, because he kind of gave him all of the extra flavor. But Andrew, The Force Awakens, were you a fan coming out of it? Nowadays, when you think back to The Force Awakens, what kind of feelings do you have?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much stayed the same for me. I mean, I loved it going in. I was blown away. I was happy. It's not perfect. It's got little flaws. I mean, the only perfect Star Wars movie is Attack of the Clones to this day. It doesn't have, you know, it doesn't have everything falling into place like flawlessly, but it's fun, and I still love it as much as I did when I first saw it. The only it's not even really a negative, but the only thing I have to say about Force Awakens that's not like a super gushing like yay is I can already see it being overshadowed by what's going to come next. And like there's so many series, like trilogies, whatever. Like I love Batman Begins. But the two movies that come after, I find they're so much better that they overshadow Batman Begins, and it's a great movie. So I feel like there's so, you know, it's so simple in the execution, The Force Awakens, that as great as it is, it's going to be overshadowed like that by 8 and 9.
Yeah, that's super fair. I think those are good points. What about Rogue One? How do we feel about Rogue One? Because the thing about Rogue One is it's actually the start. It's the beginning of all of these problems. Because of the reshoots, because of Tony Gilroy coming in. It's the first sign of trouble in the Lucasfilm regime when it comes to Star Wars. So, James, what do you think about Rogue One? What did you think then, and what do you think now that it's been some time?
I think you said it's the start of the problems, but I think if you actually look at it, it's the start of understanding that Star Wars is possibly in the best hands it's ever been in, because they saw a problem and they had no qualms about fixing that problem. They're like, this is not the movie that we wanted you to make. This is not the movie that Andrew wants to watch, that Josh wants to watch. Let's go back in there, take the time, take the money, take the talent, and string together the film that everybody wants us to have. So, to your initial question, I love Rogue One coming out of the theater. I liked it better. It was a film, unlike The Force Awakens, I liked it better the second time. Not that I didn't like Force Awakens the second. I saw Force Awakens 4 times in theater. I saw Rogue One twice in theater. But I did enjoy Rogue One a lot, and it was the film that really, you know, when I got back from the theater the second time watching it, my wife Erin was like, we need to watch the original now. And she already saw it twice.
Yeah.
And it was the second time. She's like, let's watch it now. And then when she watched it, she's like, oh my God, look at it. It comes together so well. And I love Rogue One. I just watched it a few days ago. I think it's fun. It's not perfect, but I mean, we're not about Star Wars also. We're not talking about Citizen Kane or, you know, I don't expect Rogue One to be out for Best Picture.
How dare you, sir?
Yeah. Should I expect a Star Wars film to be nominated for Best Picture? Maybe, but do I care? Yeah. Not really.
Right. That's fair. I will say this. I absolutely love Rogue One. I love that movie. But the problem with Rogue One to me is that I can't really separate it from reading the Catalyst novel, which we were just kind of talking about. Like, it informs that film so well, and it gives you just all of the backstory that you need. And what I find interesting about Rogue One is that film is disliked by more of my close friends that like Star Wars than any of the other films. Like, there are people that just absolutely despise that movie. And even some of the people that I've talked to that like it, they literally, like, they either can't stand this aspect or this aspect, but it just happens to lean just a little bit onto the side of, like, a good Star Wars film, that they could stomach some of the things they didn't like. So, I don't know. For me, it's interesting. You know, you say it's not necessarily part of the problems, it's part of their understanding of what this is, you know what I mean, and what the body of work should be. I think that is a fair statement. It's also fair to say that this is the start of them realizing that they probably made some decisions a little preemptively, like going after these kind of directors, right? And we're going to get to that in a second, but, you know, Kathleen herself and her history with producing and everything, I think that you're starting to see holes in her game when it comes to Rogue One. But Andrew, what do you think about Rogue One? Did you love it when you came out, and how do you feel now?
Yeah, I think you're right, Josh. After I read Catalyst, I was like, God, I wish Rogue One was like a 4-hour movie, and this was the first half of it. We all know I love my long movies. Like, I would have been totally okay with that, especially the ending, like the whole escape from Coruscant. Like, that was intense. That reminded me of that Sally Field movie, Not Without My Daughter. Like, it was so just get me out of here. The movie itself wowed me, and I was more skeptical about Rogue One than Force Awakens because of how different it was going to be. I was like, I wasn't even worried so much about being introduced to all these new characters and having to get to know them. That didn't concern me. What concerned me was, is it worth it to tell this story that's so close to the originals when there's literally a billion other stories you could tell? That's what I was worried about.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I walked out of there and I friggin' loved it. I loved that you had you had this original stuff that you just, you told this story from scratch, but you had sprinkles. It was like an ice cream sundae. You had this amazing ice cream, but you had sprinkles. But here's some Darth Vader. Here's some C-3PO. Here's Yavin 4. Like, you sprinkled it in just the right amount, and you made a beautiful, picturesque ice cream sundae that I kept coming back to. I was in love with it. And the second viewing, I think you said so yourself as well, James. The second viewing I thought was better than the first because I got over the initial rush of, oh my God, Peter Cushing is alive again, to focus and listen to the music for the first time. Michael Giacchino is like my second favorite composer ever, and I really
I think he killed it, and he only had a couple weeks to do that.
He was rushed like crazy. So the second viewing cemented that I was like, okay, it wasn't just flash in the pan fan service the first time that did it for me. This is a legit great movie.
The first time I saw it, I forgot, is the thing I did not like about it whatsoever was the text naming the planets when they went to them. I don't like that in pretty much any film. I didn't like it in Guardians. I didn't like it in this. I don't like it. I just shut up. Don't do it. But the one thing has been, when Erin, she turned to me the first time I watched it, she goes, there's so many planets. Like, it was hard to keep track of. And then the second time you watch it, you kind of understand, okay, they're just, if you take away naming the planets and you just cut from planet to planet, not telling me where they are, it's a little less jarring. I think that was one of the things that, for me and Rowan, what definitely took away from the enjoyment of it, the first time at least, was because, I got another, okay, why? Like, just follow, like, it wasn't smooth. I thought the first 20, 30 minutes of it just weren't smooth. And then once they got there, it took off. And I just loved it.
Yeah, you're right. The planet thing, it was really jarring because we're not used to it. And I wasn't a fan of the text, but I was even less of a fan of the subtitles every planet got. It's like, Wobani, I'm like, okay, and then Imperial Occupied Moon. Just like, it kind of waters down the planet if you can sum it up in 3 words, you know what I mean? I mean, what would the subtitle for Tatooine be, for God's sake?
Sand. Desert planet that all prodigies are from. Yeah.
So those subtitles didn't sit right with me.
No, that's fair. That's fair. So let's roll into our next point. I think that was a good discussion there. We're more or less in a good place for it. The point I kind of wanted to make was that we love those films, but it's not the case for everybody. There are some people that didn't like either of those films. And so, like, when you look at some of the problems that Disney's having with their PR, it's a very real concern for some of these people. And they might drop off. You never know. Like, if 30% of the people that went and saw these movies feel like Disney's just boom, 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 pumping stuff out, that could be very bad down the line. So I want to get into Kathleen Kennedy herself. So, Kathleen Kennedy, great producer. I want to recap her career just a little bit. She started as an assistant with Steven Spielberg. She then became a producer along with her husband, who has a big production housing company. And basically, she really only worked with Spielberg and Lucas for the majority of her career. She worked with what I would call old industry folks that do things from the old school, and she really hasn't interacted and worked with a lot of newer directors. And so, actually, this is something that Grace Randolph brought up in some of her coverage of when she first fired Trevorrow. And it was very interesting. She said something on Twitter where she said, if everyone you meet is an asshole, then the asshole might be you. And she was literally talking about Kathleen Kennedy. Because the thing is, if you can't work with people and you keep having problems with people, it could definitely be you. I personally think that Kathy has just literally not worked with directors that don't have a really good established pedigree. And from a producer's perspective, I bet like she sees these directors and she wants to grab them and kind of bring them on. And this is something that happens all the time. All the major studios do this. They go after people that are on the come up, that are getting some buzz, and they want to like lock them in talent-wise. And I think that it's super fair to say that they probably locked these people in without necessarily knowing how they would function within the working environment at Lucasfilm. So overall, guys, and James, I'll go to you first. I mean, what do you think about Kathy Kennedy? Do you think that it's possible that she is learning from her mistakes at basically the cost of some of these jobs that she's taking away from people? Is that fair to say?
She's taken away, and she's also given them the opportunity as well. But I think you're right on most of it. I think with Gareth Edwards, and we've talked about this. Godzilla came out, got to get the director of Godzilla, and made $90 million opening weekend. They made nothing after that. But then they went for Josh Trank, and they canned him before he even shot. Before he was a pre-production for all we know on this. So assumed Boba Fett film, right?
Yeah.
And that, I think, came from Simon Kinberg, who is a producer on Rebels and Star Wars and all that. And he was also a producer on Fantastic Four, where all the reports came out that Josh Trank, it was very difficult, had a lot of problems. The minute his movie came out, he trashed Fox, right away. And probably rightfully so, if you've seen the film. Andrew, you haven't, but if you've seen Fantastic Four, the first half I thought was enjoyable, and then it just turns into plus.
Yeah, I mean, you can see when Josh Trank leaked.
Yeah.
You can literally physically see when the studio started tweaking with stuff. And to be honest with you, as I'm looking at that, and we don't know the full story, but as I'm looking at that film, I'm like, if I'm Josh Trank, I'm losing my shit as well. I'm ripping up the hotel room.
The question
if
is,
the studio comes in and interferes.
But why did they interfere? That's what we don't know. And that's what possibly Simon Kinberg told to Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm. He's like, look, this guy is a bit of a dick, or it's hard to work with. You can't work with him. Blah 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 blah. So they're like, look, this isn't happening. And then Trevorrow, we hear the same thing. He did Jurassic World. We gotta get Trevorrow. But apparently he was very good friends with Kathleen Kennedy's husband, Greg Marshall, right? And Spielberg selected him to direct Jurassic World, which, as we talked about last week on one of your shows, was he's kind of like a lesser JJ Abrams in a lot of ways, where he did what JJ does, is rebooted Jurassic World, but not as well as I think a JJ Abrams could do, because he's only done Safety Not Guaranteed. That was his only. He had one movie before that,
Right. Yeah.
And then apparently he was really hard to work with on that as well. So so maybe she starts to experience that, and I do think that they were getting the flavor of the week directors. Lord and Miller, I think, is a completely different thing altogether. They weren't the flavor of the week. They weren't. They did 21, 22, Lego, Meatballs. They've done movies, And so I think they thought that their style and the Han Solo film would mesh well together. And I think what happened was they didn't have the respect for the property that Lucasfilm wanted, and they were telling a very different version of the film Lucasfilm, Kasdan, and Kennedy wanted to make, and that's why their firing is a different story than the other two. I think they were far along, and then they saw, we don't want this Han Solo film, we want this Han Solo film, and they were like, well, no, we're not, that's not us. And so, like you said, Kathleen Kennedy's old Hollywood, they're new Hollywood, and they don't mesh. So, but whose job is it to mesh? I would say it's the director's job.
Well, the problem, the counter-argument to that is that when you hire someone, you have to vet them to make sure that they're going to be the one to do the job. And, it's not so simple as, and look, do I think everything's going to be okay? More or less, yes. But it's not as simple as they're just going in a different direction and this and that. I mean, they've literally had to take actors out of the Han Solo film because of scheduling conflicts now as they move forward. So people have lost an opportunity to be in Star Wars film. And, look, they say the right things when the microphone's on them. But the truth is that sucks. And, there's probably people on set. There's probably people in the crew that have been literally affected by these decisions. So it's, what I mean? It's not so simple as her just saying, well, we need to go this way and everything is fine. I also think it's interesting that you brought up some of the problems that she has with maybe the different directions for the brand. An interesting thing popped into my head. George Lucas used to love when fans or other creators would parody Star Wars. He famously was all about that. He was on the Robot Chicken thing. He was doing all these different things. When Kathy took over, she put the kibosh on all of that. She never wanted that kind of stuff out there with Star Wars, because she is just so obsessed with this brand identity, which maybe that's okay. But Andrew, I want to go to you. What do you think about what is going on with Kathleen Kennedy? Does she have too much power? Is she making the right moves for Star Wars? What do you think?
I think you said the operative word just now, Josh, power. Star Wars has always existed, before the buyout. It's existed outside of the Hollywood machine. It was
right.
the biggest franchise in movies, and the biggest company in movies didn't have their fingers in it. So it was like this nuclear warhead that no nation owned, and it was just sitting in the middle of the ocean, but it was the biggest warhead ever, and everybody wanted it. Now all of a sudden, the big boys, they have this warhead in their hand, and they're terrified. I think it's a matter of everybody at Disney on the business side of things is terrified of this power that they have now. They don't know how much is too much. They don't know if reining it in is smart or if it's not smart. They are, they're just juggling, and they're hoping to catch all the balls before they hit the ground. They're hoping that this thing, which has raked in billions in the past for essentially one dude, can do the same thing for a company. And at the same time, they're like, okay, we want, like you're saying, let's get these hot directors and these hot new talents to come on board and direct. But that's where you have the problem, because now you're inviting the other end of the spectrum into this power. And the other end of the spectrum is people who grew up as kids loving this nuclear warhead and worshiping at its altar and being like, oh man, this warhead is my childhood, it's the greatest thing ever. And you're putting these kids in this candy store and saying, okay, I'm going to put you in charge of the candy store. Don't eat all the candy, though. And the kids are like, I wanted to eat this candy my whole life. So they're gorging themselves, and they're like, let me try this, let me try that. And you have these responsible adults saying, no, we can't. We're scared of spending too much candy. We're scared of having this new flavor of candy. Don't do that. And it's this mentality of, I'm scared of all this power I have, with, oh my God, I finally have this power I've dreamed of as a kid, clashing together. Everybody is, I think everybody is either overestimating or underestimating what Star Wars is, and they need to look at it from the same perspective. They need to look at it from the middle ground, not as this giant brand and not as my childhood dreams come true, but as an important story that's important to millions of people, and we owe it to those people and to the story to do it right.
See, I think, can I jump in here, Josh? Do you mind?
Of course, I can tell you're itching.
I just think the problem is you can't get Tim Burton to direct a Star Wars film, because he is going to make a Tim Burton film. Star Wars has been a George Lucas film through 6 movies. I know he didn't direct 2 of them, but he was still the guy saying no. They would do little things, but aesthetically, they all look the exact same. There's nothing special about a Star Wars movie. Put in a couple cheesy wipes, put in John Williams music, and we're all very happy with what we see. But now, you're going to go, we got to get this director, that director. Gareth Edwards, have you seen Godzilla? There's no action in Godzilla. There's none. And from what we've heard, there was no action in Rogue One, and that's why they had to go back and reshoot half of it, because they wanted to bring the action in. You've got Lord and Miller. What do? Comedy. They come in. I think they really thought that they would be able to play out the tone and whatnot of it. And I think what happened was they went too far and they were improvising, which is not what you do. Star Wars is a brand. We talked about this before. It is a TV show. It is a series. It's a serial. Everything has to be consecutive. They all have to look the exact same. They are directors for hire. They should really be going after people that just do whatever they say. There's no artistic, artistic obviously, but Ron Howard is perfect, I think, to do this Han Solo film. Yeah. Nobody should be worried. He's going to do exactly what they want him to do. He's going to make the movie look plain and simple. Just shoot it like this. Like Kevin Smith would be perfect. Just put the camera on a tripod, let the actors do what they need to do, and if you have to, put in a wipe, put in some awesome music, and let it go. It's not a director's property. That, I think, is the issue. This is not, like I said, Tim Burton cannot come in here. But Tim Burton can't come in and do a Star Wars film because it'll be a Tim Burton film, and that is not
right.
It's still, no matter how you look at it, it's still a George Lucas film. It always.
That's what I'm. But to your point, to kind of challenge what you said, George didn't make films like that. If you even look at the first Star Wars film, it's hard for us to look back and contextualize it, but that was the craziest movie ever at the time.
Well,
That was insane, and he took multiple risks. And real quick, I just want to say, that's part of the reason, when I heard in interviews Colin Trevorrow talking about episode 9 and how much he wanted to push the envelope, he kept saying that. He was like, no, we need to push the envelope because George Lucas pushed the envelope. And I understand that, and he wanted to put his stamp on it. And it just feels like, although you're right in a way that I would say the aesthetics of Star Wars are pretty simple. Like, the aesthetics are not hard to nail, but the story itself is, I think, kind of in a scope that's mythological, mysterious, and it needs to have its envelope pushed. I just cannot accept the fact that it's just going to be beat. You know what I mean?
I completely agree with you, but I'm just saying, if you look at it, yeah, the original trilogy, he was like, we're going to go all over the place, and it was like a wild ride, and no one had ever seen that before. And then he did that again with the prequels. The prequels was not, like, we take it for granted now, but that was Jar Jar Binks, as annoying as people think. He walked around, you believed he was beside Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon. Like, you just believed he was there. You know, Watto was there. Frank Quaternaros is the greatest character ever created. But the problem is, they weren't well received, and they didn't make $1 billion, $2 billion. And now, like Andrew said, Disney's holding it. And The Force Awakens, what JJ Abrams do? He went back and he made this simple story, a couple practical effects with that really terrible looking bird on Jakku that goes like this. It looks like it's out of lap.
Yeah.
But like he did that, and it made $2 billion. So now in Disney, like, I agree, they need to take a chance. And James Cameron came out and he blasted The Force Awakens, and everybody gave him hell. But he was completely right. Every Star Wars film between Episode 1 and Episode 6 raised the bar of what movies can do. And then Episode 7 and even Rogue One kind of just, I agree, they
played it safe. It was par for the course.
So I think the question, Josh, not to take over your show, is what do they need to do to go forward? Because right now they're stuck. Like Episode 9, JJ Abrams, they need him there. They need to just wrap up this trilogy. What film is it? It can't be the Han Solo either, because that's the Han Solo film. Sorry for talking so much, but that's a risk on its own. Because you didn't want it, people don't want it, so they have to just make that a good movie. What movie is it that they can branch out and be like, this is the next step?
But here's the thing. This kind of brings us into our next topic, which is one of the things that I think is actually holding them back, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge because they don't have Kevin Feige, and that would be canon. So I want to talk about the story group, and I want to talk about the idea that maybe canon itself and their strict adherence to the canon might be part of the problem. Because if you even look at the comic books, like one of the reasons that the comic books, just like The Force Awakens, when they first came out, held all this just luster, and they were so cool because it was new Star Wars and it was canonical and it fed right into everything else. But eventually you realize they're telling the stories between A New Hope and Empire. We already know, spoiler alert, he throws the Emperor down the shaft. Like, you know what I'm saying? And they are afraid. We just keep hearing more and more reports of this. They are afraid to do anything in this new area. Anything between the Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, they've been very scared to touch. I don't know if they exactly have a plan for that. And it just goes back to what Andrew and I were just talking about, where I think this story group is more like editorial. They are keeping the logs of everything that has happened. They know the inner workings of where we have been. They have no idea where we go from here. How do we get to that new place without muddling it up? You need to bring in one person with a team, and you need to build a vision for what that looks like. But that's kind of reaching a little bit. The topic at hand is the story group. Do you think, I want to go to Andrew first, just because you and I have been rambling a little bit here. Andrew, do you think that the story group is a part of the problem? Maybe their adherence to canon and all of that. What do you think, man?
See, I know James disagrees with me on this, but I love the idea of canon being as strict as it is, because growing up as a Star Wars fan when I was younger, you know, I would try to grab onto books and see like, oh, what happens next? Where's this story? Where's that story? And the books were just like, I can swear on your channel, right?
Yes.
Yes, I thought those books were just a clusterfuck, man. Like, it was just anything and everywhere. Like, oh, Yuzan Vong comes in now. Oh, this person had a baby. That person had 2 babies, and one of them's dead now. There was no quality control. It was like the video game industry right before the crash of '83. Everybody was making a game, even people who had no business making games. And I think that regulating that was the smartest thing they could have done. I think wiping the slate clean was the smartest thing they could have done. And now they can tell the story properly, and they can learn from their past mistakes. At the same time, though, you're absolutely right. That Star Wars comic, right now they're boasting like, "Oh, guys, we're getting closer to Empire Strikes Back." It's like, screw that. What happened after Jedi? We got that Shattered Empire comic for like 2 seconds. Like, that's the story where you can really branch out. Give us Lore Santeca. Give us stuff where we don't know where it's gonna end up. Make us excited again instead of just like, oh, and now they're gonna find Echo Base, and now they found Echo Base. That comic, I mean, I'm having fun with the comic for the most part, but there's only so many times Luke can sit in his X-wing and be like, let's see what Yoda did 80 years ago.
Exactly.
I don't care anymore.
Device. They're like framing what should be fresh stories in a way that's like so weird, and I think that they're literally stepping on their own tail in a lot of respects, and I think it's only a matter of time before they screw that up and they contradict something, and they've already kind of done it. Remember, like Filoni's walking back on the whole "that's Wolf" or "that's the guy from Rebels, Rex." He's in Return because he's already walking back on that because of something that might happen in Rebels season 4. And so all of this stuff that they don't have quite figured out, that is why I think they need someone, a visionary. They need a single person or a single team with a vision to make this thing work. But James, canon. Is canon the ball and chain of the Disney-fied Star Wars?
Yeah, I see. I don't hate canon, Andrew. I love the idea of like Aftermath. I was so excited for Aftermath. I want to read it. The problem is Andrew just read Leia, and he said it was fantastic. And I want to read Leia, but I decided to read Phasma first, because what do we know about Phasma? She looks cool, right? But Leia, they had to go back to when she's 16 years old, because God forbid you tell me a story after Return of the Jedi with her. And I kind of know, what's going to happen. And now there's cool things that obviously they can add and whatnot. You know what I mean? That's how I feel. It's just, I think the problem is they keep getting held back. And we've approached Hidalgo on Twitter, and what does he say? He's like, oh, that's canon, but really it's just, how you perceive it. Nothing's really, like, so what's the point of any of it? And if you're just going to handcuff yourself and the authors, like, I feel bad for half of these. Like Chuck Wendig, I feel so bad. He could not do anything in Aftermath, and we were promised one thing, and he gave us something else that he was obviously hired to do. And I feel bad that that everyone, like, is ripping on him because he couldn't, like, he just is not allowed, and they're handcuffing themselves. It is a ball and chain. They just can't go forward with what they want to tell us because everything has to be canon. Why? Why can't they? Like, I know, Andrew, you don't like the Force Unleashed because Starkiller is way too powerful. Fair enough. I don't think he should be in a movie either. He is too powerful. But why can't they just make the Force Unleashed 3 and be like, this isn't canon, have fun, take down a Star Destroyer with the Force? You know what I mean? Like, why can't they just allow themselves to have fun with their property? It's like they're... Give us little things. You could, the old EU books I could never get into because things just happen, and I'm like, that's ridiculous. Why? It's like, no, that's stupid. That's how it was. Now I like that they're a little bit more grounded, and obviously everything has to happen for a reason. But I feel like there's no concrete plan on, like you said, Josh, on anyone's end. It's kind of like tomorrow they're going to wake up and be like, we should do a book on X. And, but we can't do it. Okay, we'll do X here. And this will... And it's like random, they're coming out with books. There wasn't a plan at the beginning saying, we're going to have Aftermath, 1, 2, 3, and then Lost Stars, and then this, and everything's going to, and everything in the book world should kind of work the way the film world works in this consecutive line, almost linear. You can go back once in a while, but have like a plan in your novels and your comics. And the comics, what's happening in the Obi-Wan film, because of the comics covers them. You know what I mean? Like, you're just like, why? Just have fun with it. That's how I feel.
I think there's a solution to this problem, and it's that Disney needs to make less extra material until the movies open those floodgates more, until the movies say, okay, this is where Luke was, so now you can write about that. This is what the Old Republic is. They are, now that we have more Star Wars movies coming out than we did before, we need to balance that out by having less books. Because before it was the other way around. We had to wait a long time for a movie, but there's like 80 books coming out a year. Now it's all of that together, lots of movies and lots of books. And you're right, it's like, okay, we want 7 books this year, but 6 of them are going to be handcuffed because we can't tell people who Snoke is yet. So make 2 books a year. Make 2 comics, and that's it. And like, don't like. There's like 17 different comic series right now, and as much as I'm having fun with them, we don't need 17 comics just to say Mace Windu was good with a lightsaber. Like, focus on the big reveals in the movies, and then once that floodgate is open, once you drop the bomb of whatever this bomb is that we assume is coming, then you can play with that in the books.
But this is the one thing that bothers me with canon, is the hand. I love when you can pick up a book and it connects to the next book. And Rebels, I think Rebels is doing it right. Of all of them, and it's doing it in a time period that we already know a lot about. And that's, like, I just think Rebels is the one that's really got in it.
Rebels doing it right. Yeah, absolutely. I would say, the thing about it is, Dave Filoni learned from George Lucas, right? So he's a protege. He understands the right way to tell Star Wars stories. It's funny. They should probably just give Dave more of a position at Lucasfilm. I really trust him. Not that I don't necessarily trust Kathleen Kennedy, but like with some of the problems and the issues they've been having, it seems like he's the kind of guy that could right some of those wrongs. So I would agree with that. The last thing I wanted to talk about in this video is just the JJ taking over episode 9. Do you guys briefly just want to go over that real quick?
Sure.
No. Okay.
Fine. Yeah, so obviously JJ taking over, I have mixed feelings about it, okay? Yeah. I don't know. I don't necessarily trust the decision. It feels like a very safe, very Disney move, and that kind of bugs me. That kind of bothers me. So, James, what do you think, man? Are you excited for JJ? Because you and I actually haven't really talked about it. I did a video with Andrew, but I haven't really talked about this with you.
That's right. I did a video with Brock on our Rebel Scum channel. I'm nothing right now, to be completely honest. You guys, when you guys did the vote of confidence a week ago on the channel, JJ Abrams versus Rian Johnson, who should direct episode 9, we joked because we flipped the coin and Andrew got JJ Abrams, and the three of us joked how Andrew got screwed over in this argument because Rian Johnson was obviously the choice. JJ Abrams pretty much said he didn't want another Star Wars film. Yeah. This is absolutely the safest bet, the safest choice they can make. Whether or not the film he makes is safe, we don't know, and I think we're all pretty confident it will be extremely safe. So hopefully Rian Johnson tells a story that blows our mind. But now, JJ Abrams, for me, his weakness as a filmmaker is the conclusion of his films. You watch, if you name all of his films, I don't think he's really had a 100% satisfying ending to any of them, necessarily. And now he's telling a movie from beginning to end, 2 hours, 220 minutes, whatever it's going to be, that is just an ending to a trilogy of films now. What was that?
It'll be 347.
347. That's what you want.
I have.
That's what oh, man. But, whatever it is, this is going to be a finale, and that's his thing, and it's going to be safe. And the thing that really drives me nuts is when the trailers came up with Force Awakens, and we saw Maz Kanata's castle, and we saw that it had flags from the prequels, from the pod racing outside, and then he made an effort to digitally remove that. And basically, the problem I have with him is the lack of respect and appreciation for the prequels. And I'm not saying I need anything from the prequels, but I need the person who's making this film to acknowledge that those 3 films exist, because this is all in the same world. Love it or hate it, this is the same world. And, we heard that the other thing is, Rian Johnson said, can you add this scene? JJ said yes. Rian Johnson said, can you add this scene? He said no. What's the work relationship like between them going forward? Is JJ Abrams going to want to finish Rian Johnson's story, or is JJ Abrams going to want to finish JJ Abrams' story? That is the biggest question that I have about all of it, because when he came in, he had Michael Lawrence's script, and he goes, nope, I'm going to do my thing. Get that out of here.
Right. Andrew, what do you think? I mean, you and I talked about it a lot. I mean, has anything we've said in this video maybe made you rethink it?
Well, what James just said, that's a good point that I totally forgot to bring up in our video, Josh, is I'm a lover of the prequels myself, and I love when something that might not be amazing is made better by association with something that is amazing.
Yeah, fair point.
I'm not the hugest fan of X-Men 3: The Last Stand, but because it's part of X-Men 1 and 2, I don't, despise it. It's there, and it's part of this world. So what I want is at the end of the day, when all's said and done and I'm 70 years old and I sit down and I watch all the Star Wars, I want it to all feel cohesive. I want every chapter to feel like it matters. What I don't want is I don't want to sit down and watch 3 movies and then watch 19 other movies that ignore those 3.
Right.
Because that to me feels like, A, you're spitting on all the hard work that was put into those 3 movies, and B, you're wasting the audience's time by getting us invested in something only to say, no, forget about that. That doesn't matter anymore. And I think that all, and like the whole thing, the issue you brought up with like the pod racing flag, that goes back to what I said about how these old Hollywood people who have their hands on Star Wars now are just scared shitless because they don't know, they're terrified of getting that prequel reaction from people again.
Yeah,
and what they don't realize is that the prequel reaction doesn't have anything to do with the pieces of the prequels itself. It has to do with the execution of some like a person who was not told no, who went and executed these movies in a mad sort of way.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, you know, my opinion on it is kind of mixed. I'm on the negative side, though. I got to be honest. Like, I'm on the negative side. Maybe it's just because I'm such a fanboy of Ryan's, and I was like, oh my gosh, Rian Johnson's going to complete the trilogy. This is going to be amazing and so good for Star Wars. And now it feels like JJ, like you said, is he going to finish Ryan's story or is he going to finish JJ's story? That's a real concern. And I just think that he's so much the director that Kathy wants. And I'm not saying she can push him around because that's not necessarily what she's trying to do. But she can make him make changes if it's to the benefit of Star Wars. And I'm just so not convinced that JJ can do an ending, like any ending at all. So like the ending of, this is arguably the most important movie of the new Star Wars films. This will either, you know, finalize the whole saga, or it will serve as a bridge between this time period and what is to come next. So I think that it is ultimately very important. Getting JJ does not restore the faith that I lost when they fired Trevorrow, because even though I didn't want Trevorrow on the film, the way that it all happened and the way that, you know, it, within the span of a couple months of them firing Lord and Miller, it just feels like they had this moment of clarity over at Lucasfilm where they were like, you know how we fix Star Wars? Fire everybody we hired. And that doesn't sit right with me. So I don't know. That's kind of where I stand on it. So I don't know. I think we can leave it there, guys. I thought it was a good video. We got into a lot of different topics. You know, the thing is, Disney is clearly ruining the thing that we all love. I'm glad that we're all in agreement about that. Kathy Kennedy. Who's going to fire Kathy Kennedy? We need to fire Kathy. No, I'm just kidding. I love you, Kathy. Don't fire me. Don't fire me. But anyways, any last thoughts, guys? Last thoughts, positive or negative? Where do you stand with Star Wars and Disney right now? James, tell me.
I'm on board with whatever. They haven't blown me away necessarily, but they haven't scared me away either. I'm on board for whatever. Like I said at the 7 hours ago when we started this video, Star Wars is fun. And as long as I keep making Star Wars fun, I'm going to be right along with them. If The Last Jedi stinks, if Han Solo stinks, maybe we'll have a different conversation. But right now, Rogue One, Force Awakens, I've enjoyed them both. And so I'm going to just keep going along for the ride.
Yep, fair point. Andrew, any last words, thoughts on Disney, Star Wars, Kathy, JJ?
I think that right now, as it stands, I would say they are 2 for 2. They're swinging for the fences. They just need to realize that the bats they are swinging with are very fragile bats. So swing carefully. And if swinging carefully means fire 200 directors until you get it right, that's fine. As long as at the end of the game, we're 3 for 3 now.
Yeah, we need to be 3 for 3 for sure. Still have faith in the Han Solo film. Overall, I still, like you said, I like what they're doing over there. They respect what Star Wars is. And I know I said a lot of, things poking fun at their situation. But at the end of the day, they did a great job with Celebration. Reed Pop did not do a great job with lines. But Disney did a great job. The panels themselves, the content they provided was great. They understand what we want as fans. So look, I'm getting a lot of love from Disney. I love the new canon. I love Disney. What they have been doing behind the scenes does give me concern, though. So let us know in the comment section. What do you think, guys? Do you think this is the Disneyfication of Star Wars? Do you think Kathleen Kennedy has too much power? I'd love to have a conversation with you about that in the comment section below. These fine folks are from the Rebel Scum Podcast. You probably already know that because they're the dopest dope. But if you don't, go over, check out their channel, watch their videos. I'm over there a lot arguing with Andrew and James too. So tons of fun. So that's where they can find you. I guess I kind of stole the thunder. Usually I ask where people can find you, but
I've spoken a lot
there
already.
All right, guys. Well, we'll leave it there. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and nerdy day. See ya.